Tathagata is truth. Good morning everybody, and thank you for your practice, beautiful chanting. Thanks for leading us in that at the Nebraska Zen Center. It's just really wonderful, and to take in those words from the Faith and Mind poem. Each of us is unique, and Zen teaches that we really got to embrace our uniqueness. We really need to embrace our uniqueness. And this might not be totally clear when you come to a Zen center, because it seems like everybody's trying to conform to doing the same thing. But I just want to state it out explicitly, the importance of us embracing our own individuality. And we see confirmation of that uniqueness, of that individuality throughout the world. Each of us, not only is each of us here different and unique, and that is important, but also everywhere you look, you find diversity. You find it in the trees that are in the neighborhood. Oak, maple, you name it, birch, ash. You find it in the Zen Center's backyard, in the flowers that are there, and the grasses. All that diversity. You find it in the insects. They all have 6 legs, a thorax, a head, and an abdomen, but they're all unique, all of the insects. You find it in the cars. Every car is a little bit different. We find diversity in houses. Everywhere you look, there's diversity. And we're each coming at this practice from a different perspective. And my experience has been that Zen affirms that different outlook, that each of us has a different outlook. And at the same time, we learn, the practice is learning to harmonize with each other. And chanting is a wonderful way of learning how to harmonize our differences. In fact, there is a Zen poem called The Harmony of Difference and Equality that affirms exactly what I'm saying. It affirms that those differences that each of us have, and it also is encouraging us to affirm our oneness. And that's what we just read in the Faith and Mind poem too. So I want to just introduce this Dharma talk with that. And now this particular talk is part of a series that I've been giving on 8 points to optimize our Zazen practice. And this point is chanting. Chanting Zen is a means to optimize our Zazen practice. So what I want to share in this is just to give you first a little bit of background on my own kind of difficulty in chanting, coming to chanting practice, and then offer some thoughts about how to think about chanting in a Zen context, maybe a little bit differently than you have, or to give you some more information that might help with facilitating your interest in the practice of chanting. That's really my hope here, is to facilitate your interest in chanting practice. And as I say, it can be a great means to enhance our Zazen, right? So, the chanting, sound, and listening. These 3 things, chanting, sound, and listening, are all deeply connected. So when we're talking about chanting, we're also talking simultaneously about sound, right? The sound that we hear. And we're talking about hearing, we're talking about listening. Those 3 things can't be disconnected from each other. Hearing is such a foundational sense for human beings, and apparently we learn to hear before we even learn to see. In the womb, that is. We're learning to hear. We learn to hear, and the vibration of sound, that is learned before we even exit our mother. So hearing is really a primal, it's more primal than seeing. And hearing is even considered a kind, from a Zen perspective, hearing is a kind of seeing, to listen. The early Indian sages, the ones before the Buddha, many of them would go to the forests and sit at the foot of a tree, and they would have these amazing, profound insights and discoveries about the nature of reality. They would sit at the foot of the tree and they would listen. And the first thing, what they heard is referred to as shruti. Shruti. And basically what that word shruti means is things heard. Things heard. What did they hear? What did they hear? They harmonized themselves with the whole universe. And it's believed that what they heard, they were listening so deeply when they were sitting at the foot of the tree that they could hear the sounds not just in the immediate vicinity, but the sound way out there in the universe, in the middle of space. And what was the sound that they heard? They heard this sound vibration. That's what they heard. So listening is a profound practice, and that's what we're doing when we're sitting Zazen. We're listening for that sound. One of my teacher's teachers, Omori Sogen Roshi, he was a Rinzai Zen master, Japanese Rinzai Zen master, and he said that in Zazen you should be able to listen so deeply that you can hear the ash from the incense drop into the incense holder. I have yet to succeed at that practice, right? But it's inspiring. To me, it's inspiring. Some people might feel intimidated by that, but I feel inspired by it. I feel inspired by that. Like, can I really listen that deeply? We want to hear the subtle sounds of the universe. My own teacher, Diane Roshi, she said that when the only way for you to see how much the world moves is for us not to. So when we're sitting Zazen, if you're really listening deeply, you can feel the spin of the planet around its axis. And I just learned recently that the spin of the Earth around its axis is actually going 1,000 miles an hour. So if you're really listening, you can feel that spin. The sutra, the poem we just read, Faith in Mind, the poem we just chanted, says, in stillness there is motion. In motion there is stillness. In stillness, in Zazen, there is motion. Right? The entire earth is spinning. And not only is the earth spinning around its own axis, it's also spinning around the sun. And how fast is that going? A mere 67,000 miles per hour. So if you think, when you're stuck in traffic, remember, you are never stuck. You are going so fast. We're spinning so fast. And that doesn't even take into account the spin of the solar system around the Milky Way galaxy. That's going even faster. It just blows your mind. We are going at practically light speed right now. And when we sit really still, we get in touch with that light speed. What does this have to do with chanting? Listening. One of my, and again, listening doesn't come easy to me, and I guess my guess is that for many of us, listening doesn't come very easily. I had to be taught to listen, and my first experience of being taught to listen, well, I should say there's probably been several, but one in particular that one of my college professors, John Grimm, I was doing my thesis with him. I was just starting out for the year, and I was very intimidated by him, and I felt like I had to fill the space with words, being in his presence, in his office, alone, just me and him. I felt like I had to say something, and so I made small talk. And he cut through all my garbage, and he said, "Listen." And then there was silence. And it was a little bit embarrassing for me initially to be told that. But then afterwards I thought, okay, there's a direction here. And that's what Zazen does. When we sit in silence together, it provides us a direction to go. We can't hear the direction when everybody's talking or when our mental chatter is blah, 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 blah. Can we just listen? And my own teacher, Diane Roshi, she said, the first rule of the Benedicts, the Catholic monks, is in the Latin, ascolti. Listen. Right? So listening is a deep, deep practice. That's what our practice is. And again, chanting goes hand in hand with listening. Because when we're chanting, we're also simultaneously listening to the sounds that are coming from others. We're listening to the sounds that are coming from each of us. But like I mentioned, it's not easy to chant in a foreign language. We chanted in a foreign language this morning, the disaster preventing dharani. We were chanting Nomo Samanda. Right? These are sound vibrations. So one way to get our head wrapped around chanting in Japanese is to remember, when we're chanting in Japanese, we're creating a vibrational frequency. And you don't have to know the meaning of it. But still, when you're doing this for the first time or you're not really into it, it might feel kind of awkward to do. Maybe you feel like you're like, where's myself in this? I know for me personally, the first time I chanted with my teacher, it was very awkward. It was very awkward. I didn't consider myself Buddhist. And here I was given a piece of paper and expected to chant from it and to use my voice, and told that this is part of Zazen practice. And I thought, gosh, I wish I didn't have to, my voice, I don't know, it sounds funny coming out. That's kind of how I was thinking. I felt embarrassed in chanting when I first did it. I would get all sweaty and heated up and all. But as I continue to do it, that self-consciousness starts to drop away. And the gift of chanting is that we begin to find our own voice. That's the gift. That's the greatest gift of chanting, is that right now, I could not say a word that I'm saying to you right now without having had practice chanting for years. The chanting practice that I did with my teacher has led me to this particular point right now. To have a resonant voice, to have a voice that sounds harmonious, that comes with practice. And I remember when I was in training with my teacher, before I ordained as a priest, my teacher was asked to make an offering at a Christian church on behalf of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday from a Buddhist perspective. So she asked me to go to the church. And this was in the neighborhood, the city where my alma mater, Bucknell, is, in Lewisburg. And one of my religion professors was there too, Carol White, a really beautiful professor. I learned so much from her, and I really admired her. And I was excruciatingly nervous to be standing, to first of all be sitting up at the altar, and then to walk up to a podium in front of a group of probably 60 or 70 people and give a short bit from the Buddhist tradition to honor Martin Luther King Jr. I was my heart was pounding in my rib cage. I felt like it was going to just pop out. And I think my teacher, Carol White, she was up on the altar there with me as well, and she was going to make an offering. And she looked over at me, and I think she could tell that I was a little bit anxious, maybe. And she put her hands together in a fist, like, you can do it, you can do it. And so I felt her confidence in me. And then I remembered also that I'd been chanting in front of large groups of people, not as many as there were in that church. I'd been chanting for large groups of people for a number of years by that time. And hey, I could do this if I remember how to find my voice, And we find our voice when we start chanting. We find our unique voice. We find that uniqueness that we want to embrace, that uniqueness within us that we want to share with the world. Just as the elm tree, just as the oak tree has its own voice, it springs up out of the earth, it has its own vibrational frequency, and it puts it out there with no shame whatsoever. Yet, we human beings, we have such shame in our true self. We find difficult, at least I did, maybe you don't, and that would be great, but we tend to find difficulty, a lot of self-consciousness in expressing our true voice. The oak tree doesn't have a problem with that. The ladybug doesn't have a problem with that. The lilies, the purple coneflower, no problem. It's totally 100% itself. And it puts out the birds, right? The sparrows, the robins, no problem. They find their voice immediately, and they're in sync. They're in sync with when they find their voice, they're in sync with the voice that's the universe singing through them. And we need to find our voice. As humans, we're so self-conscious that we got to put some energy and effort into finding our voice, right? And to say that those rishi, those sages in the time of the Buddha, or before the Buddha even, were sitting at the foot of the tree listening. They were listening for that sound and harmonizing their own bodies and their own voices with that sound they heard way out there in the middle of the universe. Om. Right? That sound, we have that. It's a beautiful sound. So we want to synchronize. And sound, just this is not by any stretch unique to Zen Buddhism. Chanting is not, all of the world religions have their songs. All of Judaism, you have the Hebrew Bible recited in Hebrew. In Christianity, you have the Psalms. In Islam, the word Quran itself means recite, and the Quran itself is recited. It's sung. It's not necessarily just simply read. But sound doesn't just come from religions. Sound is everywhere, and you can find sacredness. It doesn't have to be sacred music. It could be in a pop song that you resonate with, that has nothing to do with religion. Maybe it's that sound that connects you. You come out of yourself. You feel like you belong to this world, which you do. Right? There's those songs. You think about those songs. Last month, for Taizan's departure, we had the great opportunity to sing songs, playing guitar and singing various songs like from the Beatles. I just loved that. It was wonderful. So we don't have to limit ourselves to sacred sound that is found purely in religious venues. You can turn on your radio and see if you can find those sounds that you resonate with. Sound is foundational to our spirituality in Zen. And there is a sutra, if my teacher had started us chanting the Lotus Sutra when I first started chanting, I would have never, I think I would have been gone out the door or something. Maybe not, but maybe. It would have taken me longer. But I was really happy we started chanting the Heart Sutra. Because the Heart Sutra is a wonderful sutra for modern people to get behind. Because it has this unique phrase in it, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. And there's something about that word, emptiness, that really resonates with modern people. Form, this body, your body is 100% empty. And that has been empirically verified by science, by quantum physics, that we are 99.99% space. That's just a profound insight that's been, in the Buddha's time, that was not empirically verified. It was an intuition, it was a hunch. But now we see, if we drill down into the atomic level of things, we see loads of space. I was just reading that if you were to take a block of lead and heat it up to its melting point, it would reduce down the molecules, all the space would come out of it, and it would reduce down to 10 to the minus 13th. Space. That's how much volume it would take up. So 0.000 up to 13 zeros. That amount of space that it occupies is very tiny. And the same is true for us. 10 to the minus 13th. We think we occupy loads of space with our physical body, and it feels solid. We can press against it and it doesn't move. We can press against a brick and it doesn't seem to move. But if we get down really deep, we see, there's just loads of space inside of this thing. Right? There's loads of space in this hand. This hand is just the mere surface of things. Right? It's just like the thinness of an eggshell. So, but what I wanted to say is the Lotus Sutra is one of the primary, a lot of people don't realize this, but the Lotus Sutra is one of the primary Zen Buddhist chanting texts. And in fact, even before the Heart Sutra is chanted, the Lotus Sutra is chanted in a daily morning service in Japanese Zen temples. And there's a particular chapter in the Lotus Sutra that is chanted. And that particular chapter is the Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva chapter of the Lotus Sutra. And we heard in the dedication today's dedication for World Peace Ceremony, you heard the name of Avalokiteshvara. But we don't know very much about Avalokiteshvara unless we chant the sutra about her name. Who's this Avalokiteshvara, this Bodhisattva of compassion? If we don't know anything about her and what she does or he does, then what are we chanting about? All right, let's find out. Who is this Bodhisattva of compassion? In Japanese, her name is Kanzeon or Kanjizai. Kanzeon. Kan means to see with the heart. Not to see with the eyes, but to see with the heart. Kan. Ze is the world, the universe. To see the world. On means sound. All right, here it is. Sound and sight. To see with the heart. To see sound. To see sound with the heart. That's what Kanzeon does. And that's what we are all capable of doing, is to see with the heart, to see the vibrations, to hear the vibrations of the universe and to respond to them. Or the one, Avalokiteshvara Kanzeon, is the one who hears the cries of the world and responds. Right? That compassion. When you're feeling like you don't belong, when you're feeling that shame, remember, you're not alone. You're not alone. You're connected to everybody. There's so many people who feel the same way as you, and you can connect to them when you feel that sense of shame, and then your compassion breaks in, and you can act. You can act with some integrity. You can act with love. You can look around and you know what you need to do, what your unique role is, right? Because we're all different. Our roles are all different. We all don't have to be doing the same thing. Each of us is in a different location, and our environments are different. We got to work in the environment that we're in and do what we're called to do. And we find our calling, we find our unique calling when we listen to that vibration, when we listen to the sounds of the world, when we hear the cries of the world and respond. That's our unique calling, and that's going to look different for each of us. So there's not a right or a wrong here. It's just a matter of hearing. It's a matter of listening to the sounds out there and responding, looking, and also looking with a sense of wonder, listening with a sense of wonder at the universe. Like, wow, this is an amazing, right? I happen to be alive right now. I have life. This is a great gift. Let me use my body and mind in a way that helps others in some way. All right. There is a story of a Zen monk. There's a story of a Zen monk in Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. And people wanted him, he was reluctant to give a Dharma talk, but people wanted him to give a Dharma talk because apparently he had some kind of special gift there in his practice. I don't know what it was, but they asked him, could you please give us a Dharma talk? So finally he agreed. And what did he do? He played one note on a flute. That was the beginning, the middle, and the end of his Dharma talk. Wow. Yeah, that monk was connected. Where does sound come from? Where does sound come from? This is a question we can also ask ourselves when we're sitting in Zazen to help to orient us, to help to focus our minds. Where does this miraculous sound come from? So when we're chanting, to conclude this, when we're chanting, we're bringing forth our universal voice. We're bringing forward the voice of the universe, or we're attempting to align ourselves with that voice. It's going to be unique for each of us. And when we come together in a group, as we did this morning, and chant together, we are finding that oneness amongst the differences. That's what the beauty of chanting is. We're filling our body with a peaceful vibration. And then we're sitting, right? We sit still, and we can harmonize. We can feel the after effects of that vibration. We can feel the reverberations, the echo in our body. And that helps us to sit. We just take that in as a kind of nourishment. All right, so I like to close with a little poem here. Your sound is the sound of all beings. Since the beginningless beginning of time, find it and never be alone again. Thank you.